Baghdad's Green Zone was once Saddam's seat of power. Now it's the base for the new Iraqi government. It is nearly 6 square miles ringed by concrete walls and checkpoints, all protected by thousands of private security guards. I'm trying to meet up with a few old friends, and they live in this part of Baghdad, which is called the Red Zone. And it's called the Red Zone because it's different from the Green Zone where I am, and that's where the American embassy and most of the Westerners in Baghdad live. But as a Westerner, getting out is incredibly difficult and dangerous, and for Iraqis, getting into the Green Zone to meet me is incredibly difficult because they need special passes, and they can only be issued by the American or British embassies, by the American military, or in a limited case by the Iraqi government. And what's really frustrating is that I can't get to meet my friends, and it's very difficult for them to come in and see me. The Green Zone is disconnected from the real Baghdad, a place I could travel freely around before the war. Today, the city is far more dangerous, and there are few places we can film outside the car. And those places feel strangely empty because so many residents have fled to try and find safety. Walls and razor wire are everywhere, and they're not only here to keep the insurgents and coalition troops apart, they're also here to separate Sunni and Shia Muslims. In Saddam's day, religious and tribal differences were suppressed under his dictatorship. Amidst the lawlessness of Iraq now, sectarian loyalties and divisions have fueled the violence between warring groups vying for power. The city has changed unimaginably in the last 5 years, and these side streets are off Sadoun Street, which used to be at the commercial heart of Baghdad. Now, it'd be easy to give the impression that I've ventured out of the Green Zone on my own here, but that's not true. The only way I'm able to be here is under considerable armed guard. And that's the reality for most Western journalists working in Baghdad, and what it means is that it's almost impossible to meet Iraqis under normal circumstances. Recently, Sadoun Street has been the scene of horrific car bombs and suicide attacks. Even the guy running the tea shop has moved his business away from the threat.
مأنة العالم هواية من كل النواحي تمأنت. يعني بس هذا الشارع وهذا أمان. بس بذاك
في شارع سعدون يعني
أبد كل أمان وكل حاجة ما يعتاز. أنا ما أطلع.
نعم. The other thing about working as a journalist in Baghdad is that even though you do get sometimes the opportunities, I've just had to meet Iraqis in a normal setting, the vast majority don't want to have their faces shown because of reprisals. Baghdad fell within 3 weeks of the invasion, but years later, law and order has yet to be fully restored. America's decision to disband the Iraqi army in May 2003 led to thousands of ex-soldiers having no money and no jobs, but plenty of weapons and fighting expertise. Overnight, they became willing recruits for the many armed cells ready to fight the occupation to the death. My old friend Sadoun al-JANABI believes it was a catastrophic error. What did you think of that moment? It was May.
It's the craziest and the most foolish mistake that they have ever made in their life. Because, one, if you want a country to be liberated, it should be boundaries defined.
And secure.
This is the second point. Who is going to secure the boundaries? Guards, police, army. If there is no army, it is up for grabs. Whoever wants to cross the country can cross it.
And that's when a lot of
that's where Al-Qaeda came in.
Exactly. Sadoun was my fixer in Baghdad. After a series of threats, he's now been forced to give up work and flee abroad in fear of his life. A big-hearted man, now he's not sure who to be most afraid of.
killing. Rageh, believe me, you can never tell who's the police, who's the gangster. It's now got mixed up. Checkpoints are fake, for instance. If they are fake, how could you tell that this is a checkpoint which is authentic or it's fake? They have weapons, they have IDs, they are dressed up like police, and they are Iraqis. 5 years from now, and there is no security. 5 years from after liberation, and there is no liberation. 5 years after occupation, and there is relentless effort to kill and kill and kill. Everybody is being killed now in the streets of Baghdad. Why?
Despite his gloomy assessment, it is possible to find Iraqis who still support the invasion and the overthrow of Saddam. Dr. MOWAFFAK RUBAIE is Iraq's national security advisor. In a former life, he trained as a neurologist in the UK and is one of several former exiles who've returned to take public office in Iraq. But he had a surprise for me, another trophy from the overthrown regime. Amazing.
Be careful from his eyes.
Do you think he will sell it to me? Do you think MOWAFFAK will sell it to me? If I can take it as excess luggage on Royal Jordanian?
It weighs 80 kilograms.
The last 5 years haven't dimmed al-RUBAIE's enthusiasm for regime change. I'm still a double shock, not just to see you, but to see him. Almost 5 years to the day.
There was no other way of removing Saddam Hussein than using force. And if we have to go back 5 years ago,
would you do it again?
I will do it exactly the same.
You still sound angry when you think about him.
Absolutely. Well, the crimes he has committed against the people of Iraq is unimaginable, honestly.
MOWAFFAK RUBAIE was one of the government officials who attended Saddam's execution. He's been accused of taking the mobile phone footage, which clearly shows Saddam being taunted before his execution. To many, it resembled a lynch mob, but al-RUBAIE is unrepentant.
I think that day marked a historic day in Iraq, a new chapter in new Iraq. It was necessary. It should have been done. It is a brave decision. Right.
Because you know you were very criticized by saying words like that and for attending that execution. People said, well, how can MOWAFFAK RUBAIE, a senior government minister, say things like that? You know. So,
why not attending that and make sure that it tried to make it as professional as we could? I have to admit, I'm the first to admit that there was mistake. There were mistakes happened in that on that day. But it was a brave decision. It was the right decision, and I think it has helped a great deal in reversing and in controlling the security situation in Iraq, in reversing and reverting and aborting the sectarian war in this country.
5 years ago, I reported on one war between Iraq and coalition forces. Today, there are many wars taking place inside Iraq, between religious groups fighting for dominance, criminals battling for territory, and foreign fighters linked to Al-Qaeda waging war against British and American troops. The main insurgency is led by Sunni Muslims. Their so-called spiritual leader is Sheikh HARITH al-DARI. He's wanted by the Iraqi government for inciting terrorism. He rarely appears on Western TV, so he's keen to establish the ground rules. Sheikh al-Dari claims that it's the right of insurgents to attack and kill coalition troops.
طبعا حق لأنهم محتلون وأنهم جاءوا غازين.
It's right, because they are the occupiers. They came to Iraq as foreign invaders.
ولا إلى بريطانيا ولا إلى أستراليا وإنما هذه
The Iraqis didn't attack America, Britain, or Australia. These armies came and occupied Iraq.
ألغت الدولة وحلت الجيش.
They dismantled the state. The Iraqi army took control of all Iraq's resources and government and then destroyed it. But Iraqi people are human beings. They are a proud people. They can't just stand by with their arms folded when their people are being killed, locked up, tortured and humiliated.
But this is to describe what the insurgency is fighting against. But what's it fighting for?
We are not asking for anything that complicated or unreasonable. We want the army of occupation to leave Iraq.
That's unlikely to happen in the near future. Although Britain has reduced its troop numbers, the US government has increased its military presence in Iraq significantly in the last year, and there are no clear plans for a withdrawal. But whether Iraq could find a greater degree of security without them is a question I and many Iraqis want an answer to.